Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining in the evening. I know some of you might have been had a long working day. The ones who don't have a holiday. What we'll do is I'll just quickly sort of give a brief about the Corporate Innovation Forum, then introduce our guest, and then I'll pass it on to Dan to start with his session. So this is some members are not from the forum, so for their reference, this Corporate Innovation Forum was started almost a year back in April 2019. It's just a group of innovation professionals who come together to sort of exchange thoughts on innovation. There's a mix of people from corporate innovation incubators, a few from startup, and a couple of them from even the government ecosystem, myself included. I work with a project which is a program focusing on technology commercialization as the principal scientific advisor at Government of India. So, but this group essentially started when I was still working in corporate innovation, and what we started was we started exchanging some thoughts on innovations and just to see what are the challenges that we all face as stakeholders in the same ecosystem. Uh, from then, the group has increased to almost 50 members from 35 odd companies, various locations in India specifically, mostly in Pune, in Bangalore, a few in the region, which is Delhi and Gurgaon region. There are a few from down south, from few from Chennai, also, and across the country. And then we decided that let us undertake a few activities which are value adding for our members. So getting them access to some of the innovation next. So we started this series called Innovation Dialogues, where we can have interacting with some of these innovation experts. Something called a focus on, where we sort of whenever we are in the city, we sort of meet up with each other. Incidentally, 25th May 2019 was the first meetup of the group. So it's exactly 1 year since we met for the first time. I mean, few members of the group met for the first time. So that's all about the group and about the initiative that we have. The first Innovation Dialogues, we had a session on the Industry 4.0. The second one we had on two topics. In fact, we covered. One was sustainability, and the second was innovations in COVID and post-COVID. Today we have with Dan. I know Dan from last year. We had a very brief introduction, but he's an exceptional innovation thought leader and known for his work in the innovation ecosystem. And he's worked a lot on enterprise innovation strategy, especially with blue chip companies, including Jaguar Land Rover, John Deere, Dodgecom, Bosch, and his book. Fortunately, I had the pleasure of reading the book. So he's been a co-author of an award-winning book, The Corporate Startup, which was also awarded as the Management Book of the Year for Innovation and Entrepreneurship by Chartered Management Institution and the British Library in 2018. And Dan, just to tell you one, it's an interesting thing. In our second meetup, some of the slides and some of the research referred to was from your book. So that's also a connection that some of the group members have with. Last but not the least, he's been featured in the Thinkers 50 2020 list of management thinkers to watch out for. So won't take much time. Having said that, Dan, over to you. We look forward to hearing from you, learning from you, and a lot of members would like to interact with you over the course of this 1 hour.
Cool. Thank you very much for a great intro, and thank you very much for having me. It's I heard so many cool things about the group, and now I'm happy to share here in this setup. The way we said we are going to go about the session today is that I'm going to start with a very brief intro on corporate innovation ecosystems, and then I would like us to do a fairly interactive activity. It's somewhat of a bingo game, I would say. The purpose of the game is to meet you where you are. The purpose of the game is to actually identify what are the common blockers for innovation for everybody on this call. And then we are going to deep dive into ways of solving those particular blockers that we've identified as a group. So this is the whole setup. But we're going to take it step by step. So first, I'm going to talk about innovation ecosystems. I'm hoping that everybody can actually see my iPad screen. So I'm drawing here something. Hopefully it comes on. No, it doesn't. So that's weird. I'm going to stop screen share and start it again. About the innovation ecosystem, I think we should talk about why do we need an innovation ecosystem, right? Why an ecosystem and why innovation? Well, we need to move away from the idea of innovation being done by just one group of people hidden in a basement or hidden in a garage or hidden in wherever, right? We should move towards the idea of innovation being a team sport. And like all team sports, a lot of people need to be involved. But again, everything needs to be done to a purpose. The purpose of innovation is, as you probably know, the survivability of a company or of an ecosystem, be it national, be it an NGO, or be it a private-owned company. So what does it mean to survive? Well, surviving means to understand and predict the future. Obviously, we cannot predict the future, right? There's no crystal globe. We cannot go somewhere and somebody's going to tell us what's going to happen in 5 years, right? Jokingly, if you would have been asked 5 years ago, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You wouldn't have said at home, wearing a mask and washing your hands, right? You probably wouldn't have said that. So this is how poor we are predicting the future, which is fine. But as a way to protect ourselves against changes, is basically being able to I don't want to say predict the future, but then anticipate the future. So anticipating the future means you have like a stick and you're poking around a room, dark room. You're blindfolded. You're poking around, and you understand what's in the room just by the sound that stuff makes. That's a metaphor for creating a strategy which is ahead of the technological curve. So let me explain to you what I mean by a strategy ahead of the technological curve, and then I'm going to say how does this work in terms of the ecosystems. So let's imagine we have an axis. You have time here on one axis, and then you have profitability, or I'm going to put a dollar sign here. This is positive, and this is negative. So what's usually happening is that you will have at one point a technology, and the technology starts at this point here. This is the R&D curve. The technology is obviously costing a lot of money, and then it exits R&D, it increases, and then it gradually dies off, or there's a version 2 and a version 3 and a version 4, whatever, right, of that technology. It doesn't actually matter. What matters is what most companies do. What most companies do is that they start thinking about a strategy for a particular technology after the technology is shown a lot of promise. So they either start here when technology is almost out of R&D, or some of them start here after the technology is out of R&D. And their strategy formulation takes time, right? And it costs money. And then the strategy formulation goes into deployment, and then it peaks, and then obviously it dies off. However, you can see there is a delta here at the top between when a strategy peaks and what the technology peaks. What does this mean? It means that your company is always going to be a laggard. It means that your company is always going to not be able to benefit from a first mover advantage, and even more dangerous is that your company is not able to influence the development of the technology. This is the case for 90% of the companies worldwide. However, there are companies which are very interesting, and I had the pleasure to work with a couple that are doing something different. I'm going to use green for these companies, or actually, let's try an orange. There are companies that actually start creating strategies way ahead of the technological curve, right? So they start building and formulating strategies before technologies even exist, And then at this point, they would have the ability to either prolong formulation process to the point where it matches the curve of the strategy, or they can actually start deploying it. So they will be ahead of the technological curve, meaning they will have first mover advantage, or they will be able to have, let's say, not only first mover advantage, but able to influence that technology. So these companies are very interesting. And these companies, I'm going to give you some example now, are JLR, Jaguar Land Rover. Volvo is another great example. Obviously, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and other companies. I'm going to talk to you a bit about JLR because it's a more relatable, and also it's a company that comes from a traditional industry, right? It doesn't have the DNA of an innovator like Google or Facebook does. So what JLR was doing, which was very interesting, they were talking about car as a service back in 2015, 2016. They said that regardless if Jaguar likes it or not, car as a service as a business model will arrive to the market, right? They have two options. They can either start influencing and preparing for that, influencing the technology and preparing for that, or they can just not care about it and just wait on it to happen and then see what they will do. However, they didn't want to take this passive stance and they want to be a bit more active. So in 2015, 2016, Jaguar Land Rover already had prototypes in the market and pilots in the market on car as a service business models. People can go and have subscription with a JLR rather than just buying the car, and so on and so forth. So what they were doing, they were actually trying to understand if a strategy based on car as a service can actually yield any results in the future once the technology comes. Technology was not there yet, but they predicted the technology will be available in the future. So they said that, okay, we want to start creating the strategy and learn about user behavior way ahead of the technological curve. So this is basically the why behind an innovation ecosystem. Obviously, I can give you examples on Google, Facebook, Amazon, but I think that JLR is probably the most accessible one, if you want, from terms of understanding the industry and whatnot. I will describe a bit how innovation ecosystems work and how we should go about it. In order to do that, I'm going to draw basically the backbone of the corporate startup. And then I will explain to you how it works and how it connects to what we just discussed. So basically, we said in the corporate startup, and an ecosystem is made up of 3 blocks. However, in recent months, I think I just added another 4th one. So here we have strategy, here we have practice, and here we have management. And here at the bottom, I think we should talk about culture and leadership. Right. The way the system works, and you're going to see how it's connected to what we were discussing earlier with strategy ahead of the technological curve. The way the system works, the way we designed the system is said, okay, we cannot, and by the way, here is the market. The way the system works is that, obviously, we said that you cannot predict the future. So what you do instead, you need to start creating a hypothesis in strategy. So instead of saying that, hey, this is my strategy for what's going to happen in the 5 years, you said, oh, actually, I don't know what's going to happen in the 5 years, so I'm going to create a hypothesis for what's going to happen in the 5 years. Then you take this particular hypothesis, and that actually has the form of an innovation thesis. You take this hypothesis and you move it into practice. The way you move a hypothesis into practice, it means that you're actually investing in ideas. You're investing in ideas that are based on that particular strategy hypothesis. It means that you're either investing internally on that particular strategy, or you're investing externally. You partner with startups and so on and so forth. Right? These ideas then go to the market, and they are being validated by by real customers. They are getting validated by real life cases. Right? You take an idea to the market, And how do you learn if that idea works? Well, it's very simple. You learn if an idea works through your management system. These are your managers, and these are going to be able to say, okay, we should continue investing in this idea because this is very promising, meaning that the strategy upon which it was based works, or you should go back and say, I don't see any evidence for this idea working, meaning that probably the strategy, i.e. the hypothesis upon which was based, doesn't work. So you go back and redo your strategy. I believe that the companies in the future, the companies of the future are going to be the ones that are able to run this loop from hypothesis to practice to learn very fast. The idea here is, of course, there is no industry standard for it, and I think every particular company should find their own speed. Let's say a consumer goods company or a company in B2C will probably have a faster cycle than a company in B2B. I'm going to give you an example of a company I've actually worked with that was doing this very, very well. This is a Norwegian bank. It's called DNB. It's the largest Scandinavian bank, and I think it's one of the most profitable banks in the world. I was working in their company-wide transformation. So together with my team, we transformed basically the company top to bottom, processes, training people, management system, everything. One of the things that we did innovation strategy for this particular company. And we started working initially in the retail banking sector. So we just worked with that division initially, and then we scaled the lessons learned to other divisions. Well, in the retail banking division, they had one assumption, part of their innovation thesis, that said that in the future, people would like to have banking on wearable devices, meaning an Apple Watch, meaning an Android, or whatever people carry around. Why did they say that? Well, Norwegian culture is very much drawn towards sports and outdoor activities. However, if you want to go skiing, jogging, whatever, you don't have room on yourself to have a very thick wallet with all your cards and everything that's inside. And they said that everybody is usually wearing a Fitbit or a Garmin sports watch or even an Apple Watch. And they said, okay, let's integrate banking solutions on those devices, and people can go after jogging or after skiing to a local supermarket and buy something to drink. Just scan the bracelet, just scan the iWatch, just scan whatever smart wearable you have, and then you can pay. So they started investing in two ideas on that. They invested in an internal one and an external one. Interesting is that 6 months into that investment, they realized there was absolutely no market for that. So there was no evidence from the market that that particular idea was working. And they learned that through their management system. This actually made them, after another 2 months, go back and reanalyze their innovation strategy. And they said, okay, we should probably move the item called wearable banking for wearables from the things that we are going to do for the things we're not going to do in the next 12 months. So they moved it from the thesis to the antithesis of what they wanted to do. Now, this sounds very easy, right? I mean, it sounds very logical and it sounds very easy to do. However, to be able to have this entire ecosystem, there are many things you have to have in place. And this is where I want to take the conversation next, is basically what are the micro elements of each particular block that you need to have in place in order to achieve this. Because the vision sounds nice. Yes, it works. I can tell you that it works. And yes, it is complicated to do. But there are different parts, different elements of these pillars that need to be in sync, and they need to be mature enough for this entire ecosystem to work. Obviously, culture and leadership are very important because they sustain a culture of experimentation. They sustain a culture of, I don't know the future, but I'm going to predict the future. I'm going to stop here for a second just to make sure that we're on the same page and it all makes sense so far. And then I'm going to switch to the activity that I wanted to do. And I will explain to you the activity as we started. So do you have any questions so far? Okay, I'm taking that there are no questions, so I'm going to do the following. I'm going to put my iPad down, and I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I think there is a question. I see a chat here. Let me just open my chat. All clear. Okay, good. Thank you, Sonia. I'm going to stop my screen. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. What I want to do now with you, I want to play a bingo game. I don't know when was the last time you played bingo, or if you ever played bingo, but I'm going to want to play with you a bingo-like game. I will explain to you how the game works. I will share with you a file. For the people that don't have access to the file or they don't want to participate in the game, it's fine. We're going to move ahead with the people that that are able to. Again, it's not mandatory. What's more interesting is what's going to happen after the game. So what's going to happen during the game? During the game, we're going to have a huge bingo card like the one you see here in front of you. There are some comments here. My associate Chris was supposed to do something on this one. We're going to see a bingo card. I'm going to share the link to a Miro board where we have this bingo card. I want everybody to go there and maybe log in if they already have a Miro account or create an account. It's done in less than 15 seconds. I can tell you because I've tried it last night. And then I'm going to start presenting some innovation blockers for the ecosystem. Again, as you can see, we're talking about 5 pillars. The one I just described in terms of the pillars that make up an innovation ecosystem. And I'm going to show blockers. Whenever you see a blocker that talks to you, a blocker that is relevant for what you are seeing in your organization on a day-to-day basis, you should go to the bingo card on the Miro board and just mark that number. So for example, let's say we get to number 29, the company doesn't have a corporate venture capital arm. If you feel that this is what your company is suffering from, if you believe that your company doesn't have that, you should go to this bingo card and just mark number 29, I think it was. And what we're going to end up with at the end, we're going to end up with a heat map. So we're going to see where most of the votes happen on which particular blocker. Following the game, we are going to discuss each of the top 3 most voted blockers, because I want to meet you where you guys are instead of just giving a generic presentation. I hope this makes sense. I will share the link to the Miro board now. And you guys can go ahead and log in. I'm going to put it into chat. Again, not everybody needs to be on the Miro board, but as I said, if we get 5, 10, 15 people, that's enough to get a very good and robust heat map. I'm gonna give everybody like 4 minutes to log in, so it's 3:26 here until 3:30 my time. And you guys go ahead, enter the Miro board. I'm already seeing some people joining. That's great. Just have that in front of you. Go on the left-hand side, pick up a pen, pick whatever color you want, but I think we should all agree on picking, let's say, orange.
Where is the link? Where is the link to the board?
The link is in chat.
It's not there. I can't see it.
Oh, I'm gonna put it. Oh, it was private. Sorry, I shared it privately with just one person. Sorry. Now it's for everyone. Thank you. Now everybody should get it. Go here, pick the orange, pick the orange pen. Take a decent size thickness, I would say, put it halfway through, and then once you see a blocker that talks to you, just go and mark that number on the bingo card. I'm gonna take it very slowly, so you have time to find the number and mark it again. The purpose here is to get a heat map of what are the top 3 things everybody on the call suffers from. And then we are going to discuss ways that I have seen other companies mitigate against those particular blockers. So I'm already seeing about 4 people on the board, so that's great. Still have 3 more minutes to go and join it. and then we're going to start talking through the blockers. I can tell you a bit about how the blockers were created. So together with my associate, we have a thing called the Innovation Maturity Assessment. It's a software tool that is helping companies understand what is their current innovation maturity level. And part of that tool, if your company decides to take the assessment, you will get a list of what are the top blockers for innovation based on results from your employees. And then you can create an ecosystem improvement map. Basically saying, okay, instead of doing an accelerator program as everybody's doing, or because everybody's doing, just go and create a definition of innovation, let's say, because that's something that our company in particular is suffering from. It's basically a tool that's helping leaders or change managers or change agents within a company move from what they think they want for their company to doing what the company needs. What the company needs, basically meaning mitigating the blockers that your company has, and not something that you read online and say, oh yeah, the company across the street has that thing, we need to do it as well. So this is how the list of blockers was created. It evolved a lot over the past, I would say, 2-3 years when we initially compiled the list, and it ended up being the list that you see now. Let me go back to the Miro board and see how many people are there. Oh, amazing. We have like 18 people. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, so since we already have about 18 people, I am going to start with the presentation, with the blocker. There are about 30 blockers in total, so that's going to take us about 20 minutes to run through. The first blocker which we've seen, this is number 5. If this reflects the reality of your company, just mark number 5 there, is that idea development costs are not being tracked, meaning that your company is not tracking how much they invest in each idea. They only have a big pool of money that goes into R&D or innovation, but you're not tracking it individually per idea. If you think that is the case of your company, just take the marker on the Miro board and put a stamp on number 5. As I said, in the end, we're just going to see how many dots are on each blocker. That was number 5. For number 1, our leadership team does not really help us understand why we need to innovate. So if your leadership team is not explaining to you why you need to innovate, why the company needs to innovate, then go ahead and mark number 1 on the bingo card. Next blocker, this is number 28, so 28. Innovation means different things for different people in the company. Our company doesn't have an agreed definition of innovation. So if your company doesn't have a definition of innovation or innovation very clearly defined, and everybody knows what innovation is or what innovation means for your company, then go ahead and mark 28. If you've ever been in a conversation with a colleague from another department and you talked about innovation in one way and he was talking in a different way, it means that there is no clear definition of innovation in the company. So that's number 28 on the bingo card. Number 4 on the bingo card, it's in the black column. The business case of an idea are not followed up after investment is done, meaning that you don't have metered funding, meaning that an investment is done just once at the beginning of the project. All the money are being given up front for the entire development, and then nobody follows up afterwards, except for, let's say, status meetings and some progress reports, but it's not connected, that status is not connected in any way with investment. So if you don't do metered funding in your company, go ahead and mark number 4. Number 29, so 29, the company doesn't have a corporate venture capital arm. If your company doesn't have a VC or is not partnering with a VC to do VC for them, just mark number 29 on the bingo card. Number 6, again in management, the black column, time to market of an idea is not being tracked. There is no way of knowing how long an idea has been worked on. So if you believe that in your company, ideas are being started and then nobody knows how long those ideas have been worked on, let's say 3 months, 3 years, 3 weeks, whatever, then number 6 is your blocker. So you should go and mark number 6 on the bingo card in Miro. Number 32, our leadership team aren't visible sponsors of innovation. We don't have a chief innovation officer. So if there is nobody on the board level of your company being a champion for innovation in the company, being responsible for innovation in your company, then you should mark number 32. Number 3, our leadership team doesn't regularly demonstrate innovation-focused behaviors. So basically, if your leadership team is not talking about innovation, is not being innovative, then you should probably mark number 3. A good example would be now during this COVID crisis, if your board members were still trying to meet in person to do their meetings instead of using Zoom or Slack or whatever other conferencing tool, they didn't quite clearly display an innovation-focused behavior. So I think number 3 should be the blocker that you need to stamp. Number 33, so 3.3, is common practice for customer validation to start only after enough functionality is built in the product. Meaning that you are doing pilots where you're talking with customers pretty late in the development process, only after you've burned a lot of cash on development. So you're afraid of going with half-baked solutions or with pilots or with prototypes to your customers. This is blocker number 33 in practice. Sorry, in process. So just mark number 33 there. Number 2, only a few specific people and teams see innovation as part of their job. So innovation is not considered as everybody's job, is only considered as a job for a selected few in a lab or in a department or in a certain team. If that's the case, it means that your company doesn't necessarily have an embedded culture of innovation. And this is number 2 you need to mark on your on the bingo card. Blocker number 25, 2.5. When measuring early stage innovation project, the company uses the same KPIs as for mature products, meaning that an early stage product is being measured against financial KPIs. So if you've been a product owner or a product lead or a project manager, if you just started your idea yesterday and you had managers 1 week from yesterday coming to you and asking about ROI or any other financial KPIs, it means that your company doesn't have an innovation accounting system. It means that the wrong KPIs are being used, or everybody's brushed with the same broom, basically, the broom of the financial KPIs. Go ahead and mark number 25. This is probably one of the best ways to kill innovation, by the way, asking for money very early in the maturity phase. Number 21, the company is investing mainly in core business ideas. So if your company is not investing in adjacent and transformational ideas, go ahead and mark number 21 on the bingo card. Number 19, to create a new strategy takes more than 12 months. This touches on what we discussed early on in the call when we said that, yes, usually it takes a lot of time to create an innovation strategy. This is number 19. If your company takes more than 12 months to create a new strategy, that's a big blocker for innovation, and you should mark it as number 19. We're going to discuss later how we can mitigate that. Number 7, most of the company's middle management is actively blocking innovation ideas from being worked on, focusing more on existing or the existing business models. What do I mean by that? Basically, middle management is just focusing everybody on short term versus long term. It's focusing everybody on, okay, we need to be profitable next week, next month, next quarter, rather than what's going to happen 18 or 24, 36 months down the line. That's a big blocker for innovation, and you should mark number 7 there. Number 10. A clear development plan is required before an idea is being invested in. Meaning that if you have to put together an Excel with a business case, with a lot of assumptions in, just to get through the first hurdle and to get management to invest in your idea, that's a big blocker for innovation. They should probably talk to you more about, okay, what experiment can you do in 1 week, rather than create a long Excel that's what's going to happen with 5 years down the line. So just go ahead and mark number 10 on your on the bingo card. Number 15, the legal and compliance department is making business experimenting with real clients very difficult. So if you've had issues with the legal and compliance department not allowing you to run experiments with customers, go and mark number 15. Number 11, there is no clarity on valuing, recognizing, or rewarding innovation. If your company doesn't have a reward system that's rewarding for innovation or innovative behavior, go and mark number 11 on the bingo card. Number 8, working on innovation only happens in your own spare time unless you work in the lab. So again, touching on the idea of innovation being everybody's job, if that's the case, if you're not allowed to work on innovation in, let's say, the 9 to 5 time slot, and you are only forced to work on innovation over the weekends or after 5 o'clock, unless you're in the lab, go and mark number 8. Number 22, our product portfolio and innovation pipeline are opaque, only selected if you know it. So if you don't have access to the innovation pipeline, or if you don't know the company's portfolio and it's only being reserved to, let's say, the C-level, go and mark number 22 on the bingo card. We're almost there. Number 12, decision-making is not requiring any customer validation, just business cases, financial projections. So if whenever managers take a decision, they don't ask you about evidence from the market, and they only ask you to submit an Excel sheet with your best case guesses, then number 12 is the blocker you should mark in the bingo card. Number 20, idea validation is done only through desk research and peer validation. So if you're not doing any customer interaction in order to validate an idea, and you're only doing some research or talking with your colleagues, then mark number 20. Number 13, our company middle management places more emphasis on execution than exploration and validation. So if that is the case, then you should probably mark number 13. If your management is just focusing you on executing the existing business model, then just go and validate it. If you've ever went to a conversation with a middle manager talking about the future, and they always said, yeah, focus about what we need to deliver tomorrow, that's number 13. Number 14, there's often a disconnect between our leadership team's words and action when it comes to innovation. So if you've seen the leadership talk about, yes, we need to become more innovative. Yes, our company needs to be more innovative. Yes, we need to be in an innovation ecosystem. However, they only make investments in the core business. There is a huge disconnect between what they say and what they do. So you need to mark number 14. Number 9, the innovation strategy is not connected to the overall corporate goals. So if you have an innovation strategy and that strategy doesn't mention in any way any of the core corporate goals, such as, for example, a certain impact on ROI or a certain impact on how the market perceives the company, then you should mark number 9. Number 18, ideas are fully financed from day one. You're not doing any metered funding. If that is the case, if you finance everything up front without actually creating a development roadmap and connecting that roadmap with an investment plan, then you should do number 18 on the bingo card. So basically, if you're not working like a VC and you're working like an old school corporation where you have to have an Excel, all the money comes up front, and then that's that, number 18 is the blocker for you. Number 26, innovation doesn't form a specific part of performance and feedback review. So again, this is not necessarily related to having a bonus stream related to innovation, but more innovation being part of review for every employee, like having a question there regarding how innovative a certain employee was. If you don't have that, that's number 26. Number 23. The criteria for investing in ideas are unknown. So if your company is not being very transparent with respect to how certain decisions are being taken with respect to investing in innovation, then you should mark number 23. Number 24, we don't have a clear process framework or product lifecycle for innovation. So if your company doesn't have a very clear product lifecycle with what are the stages, what are the criteria, everything, then you should mark number 24. Number 30, the technology infrastructure is outdated, making rapid experimentation difficult. So if you're running an old software or hardware infrastructure, and this makes or prevents you from doing rapid experimenting for your whatever product, then you should mark number 30. Number 16, there is a disconnect between innovation and employee engagement. So if the employees don't see how they can contribute to innovation, then you should mark number 16. If people don't have it clear why they need to contribute or how they can contribute to innovation, then mark number 16. Number 31, where we have only 3 blockers left. Number 31, so 3-1. We don't kill ideas that don't work. We just invest in them further. So if you never heard of ideas being pivoted or killed, but only continuously being invested in, becoming like these huge black holes for budget, just mark number 31. Number 17, we don't have a clear stated innovation strategy. If your company doesn't have a clear innovation strategy, so not necessarily only a definition of innovation, but also a very clear innovation strategy, then mark number 17. Number 27, our leadership team support for innovation focus risk is inconsistent, meaning that, for example, if your C-level is not fully supporting you on innovation, and they're not constantly supporting innovation activities, they only handpick which innovations they want to support. That's number 27. Now I'm going to end the blockers and end this part of the presentation with a very interesting quote. I totally love this quote. It's from the beginning of the book Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. And I'm going to give you this quote, explain to you a bit what I mean by that, and then we're going to look at the bingo card and see which blockers are the top 3 voted ones. Now, the book Anna Karenina starts with this quote: "All happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." This quote now makes the basis for something which in ecology is called the Anna Karenina principle. The Anna Karenina principle in biology states that every ecosystem that was able to adapt to changes, being climate change, being changes of other nature, was able to adapt all the elements. So not just the fauna, not just the flora, but everything, right? However, the ecosystems that failed to adapt, they all failed to adapt one of the elements that make them up. So this translates also to innovation ecosystems. The companies that are very good at innovation, they have all the 5 pillars that we just described very mature. Mature in strategy, mature in practice, mature in management, mature in culture, mature in leadership, right? The companies that fail to be innovative, the companies that fail to have a successful innovation ecosystem, they all fail for different reasons. Some of them have a very good strategy, but they don't have leadership support. The other ones have leadership support, but they are very poor in practice or in management or whatever. The purpose of the game that we just have, and the purpose of the software that I created in Outcome, in our company Outcome, is to identify what are these main blockers and then go mitigate them, so that all pillars are equally mature, and it's easy for you to continuously mature your ecosystem. Now I'm going to look at the board and see where we have the heat map. Look at this. This is great. Awesome. So I'm seeing number 10 being voted a lot. Then I'm seeing, I think, number 12 here, and number 6, I think, is the most votes. So this will be our top 3, 10, 12, and 6. Let's see what does 10, 12, 6 mean. I'm going to start with number 10. Actually, 28 is also very voted, to be honest with you. I think it's more voted than 6. So it's going to be 10, 12, and 28. Let me just go and see what these blockers are, starting with 10. Number 10, according to my list of blockers, is a clear development plan is required before idea is being invested in. This is a common problem for a lot of organizations. And whenever I'm hearing this in an organization, what I'm actually hearing, I'm hearing that our company does not have a very clear product lifecycle. Because if you would have a product lifecycle, it means you're going to have criteria for every step of the maturity process, of the maturing process of an idea. So let's say you start with empathy. There are very clear questions and there are very clear criteria that a team in the empathy stage needs to answer in order to progress to the next level, which is, for example, problem solution fit, right? So those questions in empathy, for example, are I don't know, questions around who has the problem? How big is the problem for that group of individuals? Is that group of individuals big enough? And after you come with conclusive evidence that yes, there is a problem, yes, the problem is quite big, then you can move to the next stage. So it means that you don't have to have a very clear development plan for your idea as much as you need to have the next step plan for your idea. Meaning, okay, now I'm in empathy phase and everybody in the company agrees on this framework. Now in the empathy phase, I just need to look over who has the problem, how big is the problem. And that's the only thing I need to have a plan for. Now, after I'm past that and I move into problem solution fit now, I will probably have to have other questions that I'm looking at. Questions regarding, do people want to have that particular problem solved? Do they want to have it solved with our envisioned product? And so on and so forth. But again, nobody should ask you of what is your 5 months or 5 years development plan when you haven't yet validated, for example, need or the want part of an idea. So in order to mitigate for point number 10, you should start working towards creating an innovation, a product lifecycle framework in your company. I can jump into more details here, but I'm going to go through the other 2 blockers and then just let me know if you want to dive deeper into this. I can actually pull out my iPad again and just start scribbling. The next one, number 28. I'm not picking them in any order, by the way. Number 28, number 28. Number 28, innovation means different things to different people. Our company doesn't have an agreed definition of innovation. I can tell you this one is probably the most common one I've seen with all the companies in all the countries I worked in. Usually there are 2 or 3 definitions of innovation, and they are very conflicting. The way to do it, obviously, is to have a workshop with everybody in the company, starting obviously from the leadership of the company, and start working with them through a list of, I think, like 5 questions I think we created at one point. On creating that definition of innovation. One of the questions is, okay, if innovation would happen here, how would we know it? What will be, for example, ways for us to measure if innovation would happen? Or what does innovation mean for everybody? A very easy way to sell the need for creating a company-wide definition of innovation in your company is a workshop activity I love doing. If you're able to get a lot of people in a department or another people in the leadership group of your company in one room, have them write on a Post-it note for 90 seconds, what does innovation mean for them? Give them 90 seconds with their own words, write what innovation means for them. And then give them 4 minutes to find somebody in the same room that has the same exact thing written on the Post-it note, not something similar or parts similar, but the same exact thing. And then they should group together and become a cluster. what you're going to see in a group of 20 people, you're probably going to see about 5 to 6 clusters forming. And those six clusters are basically 5 or 6 different definitions of innovation in your company. And this is how leaders will visualize the need for creating a company-wide definition of innovation in a company. This is how they will see, oh yeah, we actually have a problem. We have 6 definitions of innovation. So obviously when there are 6 definitions of innovation, nothing happens, because what you think is innovative is something that your colleague believes is not innovative, or the other way around. So that would be my tip for dealing with this. In our new book, in something that we're currently writing now, Innovation Accounting is called. You can go to innovationaccountingbook.com. The first chapter of the book is focusing exactly on creating a definition for innovation. So we have there like a workshop process, and we have a template that you will be able to use to create a definition of innovation in your company. But as I said, if you want to get buy-in to people in your company saying, yes, we have a problem, we have to make definitions of innovation, do the post-it exercise I just described. Now, the last blocker that was very voted is number 12 or number 15. Actually, I think it's number 12, to be honest with you. Number 12, decision making is not requiring customer validation, but business cases and financial projections. Yeah, this is a typical blocker for innovation, I would say. And it's a typical blocker for innovation because basically what's happening is that management doesn't actually understand the power of, let's say, lean startup or power of customer validation. They are asking all the wrong questions at the wrong time. It's very well connected to the first blocker we discussed, to number 10. It's very well connected to the idea of not having a very clear product life cycle, but it's a bit more granular. This problem is that you are asking the validation question very later in the process and not too early. My suggestion here is to start educating as many people as you can in your company on the importance of experimenting, on the importance of using the lean startup or customer development methodologies or design thinking methodology. Basically, methodologies that put a big emphasis on validating first before starting development. So that will be my suggestion when it comes to this. Educate as many people as you can. Another more aggressive approach to mitigating against this will be to for example, do post-mortems on projects that have failed in the market over the past, I would say, 2, 3, or even 5 years. Look at all those projects that failed and create very clear post-mortem document describing why the product failed. And trust me, in most cases, where in 75% of the cases, it's going to be customer validation being done too late, not having enough customer empathy early on in the development process before an idea is starting being developed or delivered or being coded or whatever you're going to call it, right? So I would say go in and look at historical data for your company and present case studies to upper management to why you need to educate more people in experimenting with clear examples from your company. Hey, we've tried I don't know how many projects. This is why they failed. These are the reasons. And by the way, look at it, 75% died because there was no customer need. No customer need equals that we haven't done customer validation before actually starting developing the idea and deploying it in the market. So I think these were the top three blockers that have been voted on. I would like now to open to any questions, or if you believe that any other blocker would be more relevant to talk about, we can do that. But I would just like to hear your question, comments, or just want to meet you where you are, basically. And I'm going to stop my screen share.
Comprehensive look at the innovation framework. I have a question for you. How do you handle open innovation in this?
Right. Open innovation, in my opinion, I'm not an open innovation expert. I would have to just give a disclaimer up front. So open innovation is, in my opinion, is just a vehicle for achieving innovation goals. It's just one of the many vehicles the company can go for, meaning that this particular type of innovation should be managed in a different way because it's different, but you should not necessarily have everything or the entire company betting its future on open innovation, right? You should not say, oh, we will only do open innovation. Open innovation is just a vehicle. It's like an innovation lab, or it's like an accelerator program, or it's like an entrepreneurship program. Sorry?
टेबल पे रखो, टेबल पे कुछ नहीं है, तो टेबल पे रखो.
I didn't quite get that. Where somebody's unmuted. But this is basically how I would answer your question. I would say that open innovation is just one vehicle. It should be managed obviously different than other ones, but it's just one vehicle. You should not bet the entire future of the company on open innovation. There's many ways to manage, obviously.
I see a question from Nilesh. Nilesh, you can maybe unmute and raise your question.
Okay. Hi, this is Nilesh from Emerson Electric. So
hey.
One big issue that everyone is facing, because all of us are innovation practitioners. And as you said, there are issues in long-term management or management perspective and innovation team perspective. So one issue is long-term innovation strategy and making it keeping it consistent over a very long period. Then only we can see the consistent result. So there obviously everyone faces challenges in that, because the management focus may change over a period, or strategies may change over a period, and our people management team itself may change. So maintaining consistency in innovation strategy, that's the challenge. So do you have any suggestion or observations on that?
It's a very good question. Thank you very much for that. I don't think I've ever heard this question, but I know it's a big issue. I would say that it depends, right? And I'm not trying to avoid an answer, but I think it depends. Innovation consistency, I think we should distinguish first of all between what does consistency means and what does stubbornness mean. We should not confuse stubbornness for consistency. If you have enough evidence that the strategy doesn't work and you want to change it, it doesn't mean that you're not inconsistent. It means that you are adapting. However, those changes need to be rooted in data, need to be rooted in experiments. Remember what I told you at the beginning with the Norwegian bank? When they said that they want to move from investing in wearables to investing in something else, because they saw no evidence on wearable technology being used in payments, or having any use in payments for that matter, then you should not call that inconsistent. You should call that as being data-driven and evidence-driven. So I would actually encourage you to make changes in your strategy without the fear of being inconsistent, as long as you can substantiate your decision with data. As long as you can go in front of management, or if you're a manager, go in front of the employees and said, by the way, what was in last week, it's out this week, because this is the evidence that we have. So I think that consistency/inconsistency it's really depending on the situation you find yourself in. If you have enough data to substantiate the change, please go change. Don't be stubborn. If you don't have enough data and you're just changing it because of whatever reasons, I think you should go and get the data and then change, because otherwise you're not going to be viewed very consistent by the employees. Does this answer?
Yeah, answers to a big extent. See, my focus of asking this question was, innovation team generally knows what works well, what innovation strategy works well. And many times it is observed that probably decision maker or the sponsors keep changing strategies, even if there is hard data that this has worked in past and this is how good innovations have happened and strategies have evolved. So obviously we keep adapting to the things. There is no stubbornness in that. Innovation cannot happen in stubborn environment. So it is like every new person tries to tries to do things in new way, and it may disturb the consistency of innovation strategy. What has worked well, it may get disturbed, and then bringing the innovation wheel back on track is big effort.
Yeah.
At least I have experienced that. So that's where that was my focus of asking question.
Right. One of the things I would totally encourage you to do. There's two things we can talk about here. One is to have a very good system where you keep track of the things that have worked in the past and the things that haven't worked in the past. For example, if you go online, you can start it and they haven't worked. And there's basically a catalog of all the things they have tried. And if you would be an innovation manager within a company, if you would have access to an internal database like that, it's very easy to argue with anybody that, yes, we should probably do this because this worked, or no, we should probably not do this again because this hasn't worked. So have like a graveyard. You can call it a graveyard. I created a graveyard for another client of mine in Scandinavia, where we basically started listing all the things that we have tried and haven't worked, and that became like a catalog for our let's say post-mortems. You go there and you find the things that haven't worked, so then you don't try it again, or at least you try it, but starting from another point of knowledge, not the ground level. The other thing I want to talk to you about here before we open to another person asking questions, I'm going to use again the black pen. What you're actually seeing, and you mentioned it, like the innovation, you said that the innovation team knows what's working and what doesn't. However, management keeps changing. Well, what's happening is that the innovation team, they work in a very agile way. So they make iterations, they talk with the customers, they make another iteration, and it changes, right? So their road to success is not linear, but it looks more like this, right? So you go forward, you go back, you go forward, you go back, and then you probably succeed. However, the people that stay above them, the people in management, they have a tie. They're in management. The people that are in the people that are in management, their mindset is more fixed. The way they create strategy is very linear. This step and this step and this step and this step. This is how we move from A to B. What's happening is that the evidence that these people are getting from the market with every iteration they make sometimes is contradicting the steps that management needs to make. So what essentially is going on here is that you have two groups of people talking two different languages. One of them is talking a language based on evidence and customer feedback. The other one is talking a more rigid language around step-by-step development of an idea or of a strategy or of whatever. The thing that you need to work on is you need to bring these people talking this language, because the future is going to be iterative approach to strategy development. Is going to be what we discussed here. It's basically going to be this. If management doesn't start speaking the same language as innovation managers, you're going to find yourself in the problem that you've just described. So again, I think it's an education of leadership issue that you're facing. Hopefully now this answers fully your question.
Yeah, you are spot on. Thanks for giving such a detailed answer.
No worries, my pleasure. Any other questions? I think there was something in the comments box. If only I can open it.
Respond on the role of the competition. My personal feeling is lack of competition inhibits the innovation, because you are very often in kind of protected markets.
Mm-hmm.
So
what's the question exactly there?
I'm saying the role of the competition in pushing the innovation industry, the lack basically inhibits when you're talking about blocking your innovation in the competition, one of the factor is lack of competition also inhibits the innovation.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have any comments on that?
I would say, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, actually. So I don't have any comments. Yes, collaboration is very important, and yes, the population it's very important, both internally and externally. So it's not about just only what we can do inside, but also what we can do on the outside or with the people on the outside. But again, I think we should just move away from saying that we are only building innovation here and we're not collaborating with everybody. And I think the coronavirus just made us realize how important it is for us to start coming together and collaborating on big issues rather than just being arrogant enough saying that we have all the answers. Internally in the country, internally in a company, internally in an ecosystem, or internally in another way. So I don't honestly have any comments beside I agree fully with what you just said. Let's see if there is any other.
Hi Dan, this is Rahul.
Hey.
Can you go to your first curve which you have drawn? Move it up.
This one?
Yeah.
The graph?
So
Here
yeah, in this, it's very interesting, which you have shown that before the need comes, you just need to start preparing and start building your product. But in this overall activity, there are two hurdles which company comes. First is the market creation. Okay, so you anticipate, okay, these are the technologies which are there available, and if you combine these 2 or 3 technology, it will give a very good value proposition to the end customer. So one activity is market creation, another is preparing to the customer, because customer sometimes behavior needs to change, which I can say Amazon was
totally
struggling at the start. Slowly they have created a market. There was a clear need from the people, but the behavior was different. They were very used to with the existing behavior, though they were facing a problem. So how to sustain in the different this model where you need to deal with uplifting the market, creating the customer, and also sustain in short and long run both.
Right. I don't think I'm going to have the answer to all your questions, or I don't think my answer is going to be good enough for you. But I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking now, because this is something I'm actually evolving, and it's something what I'm actually constantly thinking about. So I'm going to tell you my current thinking, and this will actually be a good way for me to get feedback on it. The way I'm thinking about it now, from, let's say, an intellectual perspective, right? If we have this conversation over a beer, it'll be probably even more interesting. The way I'm thinking about it now is that obviously you see that there will be some changes in customer behavior. There will be some new technologies being available in the future. Those technologies will eventually enable new business models. However, what you can do, you can start understanding how the customer behavior is going to change when those technologies are going to be available with current technologies. So you can create small experiments with existing technology that are going to, I don't want to say predict, but at least give you a good idea and a good estimate on how the market will behave once the real technology, the future technology, is going to hit. When it comes to market creation, I think that question should come probably later on, once you've validated that the customer behavior is moving in the right direction. I will give you an example again, not to be very academic or not to be very abstract. So I'm going back to JLR. I was working with JLR 2015, 2016. JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, for everybody that's not in the automotive industry. I was working with JLR 2015, 2016. And they said, again, car as a service will come, right? Regardless what JLR would do and regardless what JLR believes, car as a service will come. The thing is that they wanted to understand what is the customer behavior towards sharing a vehicle rather than owning it. That was a big assumption for a car as a service product, car as a service business model, and a car as a service strategy. That was the biggest assumption, right? How will customers react to not owning the car, but paying and paying for accessibility rather than paying for ownership, essentially? So what they've done a pilot in the Netherlands where in a very small group, like in a small geography, in a small town, on a very small group of people, they allow them to have a subscription with Jaguar Land Rover. They actually had free subscriptions like Netflix does. And depending on the subscription, you have access to free Jaguar Land Rovers. So you have a convertible, an SUV, and a normal limousine. And depending on the type of subscription, you would have more powerful or less powerful engines. Their goal here was not to understand, well, will this work, but was actually to understand how will customers behave once business models like this will exist. Will they accept such a business model? Will people be willing to have a subscription for a premium car rather than owning it? What is, on the left-hand side of the business model canvas, they were looking at what operations do we need to have in order to enable such a business model? Meaning, can we clean the cars? Can we service the cars in time? What happens when it's a hot day, it's a summer hot day in the Netherlands, and everybody wants to drive convertible? We only have a certain number, right? We don't have one convertible for everybody. We have, let's say, one convertible for every 3 people. What's happening if somebody books it and somebody else wants to book it and it sees that they cannot book that car? So these are some of the questions they were trying to find answer to with the existing technology. So they were not saying, okay, we need X, Y, Z future technology for us to learn this, but they were looking at their toolbox of existing solutions and say, okay, what can we put together with duct tape and foam and create something that it's telling us that this is what's going to happen in the future. Of course, it was not scalable. Of course, it didn't work. Of course, it didn't bring Jaguar Land Rover any money. But what it did, it brought them insight. It brought them a lot of understanding of the customer behavior. When it comes to your question regarding market creation, I think that obviously is important. But given the state of given the fact that technology will affect every company, and given the state of how connected our world is, I think the market creation is going to happen naturally and it's going to happen very fast. I don't think it's going to be just one player. And again, I'm talking just about the automotive industry because, again, I don't know all the industries in the world. But in the automotive industry, I don't see being only one customer, one company in the industry forming a market, but probably it's going to be a group of them forming markets. And you probably start seeing that in countries like Germany or countries like France, which would have a lot of automotive industry players. They start partnering in order to form markets towards, for example, electric vehicles, or for example, car sharing. Like in recent years, I think last year or 2 years ago, BMW partnered with Daimler in Germany to offer car as a service for city commuters. Again, it's a big step of two companies coming together, which otherwise compete. They actually compete on some business models. On car ownership, they actually compete. The car ownership business model, they compete. Here, they collaborate in other business models. So they are going to work together towards forming that particular new market. Again, I'm not sure if I answered your question. I think it was a very, very relevant question. I answered with the level of knowledge that I currently have in the space based on my experience with the above mentioned companies.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
No
worries.
worries.
It was helpful.
Great. I think we have kind of overshot time, so maybe we'll like to close here. Before that, any other last question or comments anyone like to make within a minute or so, or should I just go ahead and conclude? Anyone in participants list, any questions? I don't see anything, so I think I'll just go ahead and sort of close the session. Dan, thank you so much for taking out time.
No worries.
I know